The rusted sign above the old brick garage had nearly fallen off when the black luxury SUV rolled into the dusty parking lot at exactly 10 in the morning. By noon, the richest man in the county had offered to buy the entire property for less than the price of a used motorcycle. By sunset, he would discover that beneath decades of grease stains and forgotten memories rested one of the most valuable collections in racing history. But the greatest treasure hidden inside that garage was something money could never buy. Before we begin this unforgettable story, take a moment to like this video, comment where you're watching from, share it with someone who believes in second chances, and subscribe to Kindness Hub if you believe that kindness always finds its way back to us. The town of Ashford had once been famous for the roar of engines. In the 1970s and 1980s, crowds filled the local speedway every weekend. Families brought folding chairs, children wore their favorite drivers' colors, and mechanics worked through the night under fluorescent lights to prepare for race day. Now the speedway sat abandoned behind rusted gates. Most of the old auto shops had closed. New shopping centers and office complexes had replaced the repair garages that once lined Harbor Street. Only one remained. Morrow's garage stood at the very end of the road, squeezed between an empty warehouse and a patch of overgrown land. The building looked tired. Its windows were dusty, its roof leaked during heavy rain, and the faded red paint had peeled away after years of neglect. Inside worked 64-year-old Corbin Morrow. His hands were rough from decades of repairing engines. His knees hurt every morning. The garage barely made enough money to cover the bills, but Corbin refused to close the place his father had built. Every scratch on those walls carried a memory. His mother had painted the office door blue. His father had taught him how to rebuild carburetors beside the old hydraulic lift. His late wife had planted wildflowers near the entrance before she lost her battle with cancer 8 years earlier. The garage wasn't simply property. It was home. Unfortunately, home sat on land that had suddenly become very valuable. A technology company planned to build a massive business park nearby, and investors rushed to buy every available property in the area. Leading the project was 42-year-old CEO Sterling Voss. Sterling had built his real estate empire through ruthless efficiency. He was known for seeing numbers instead of people and opportunities instead of memories. If a building stood in the way of progress, he bought it. If owners refused to sell, he waited until financial pressure forced them to accept lower offers. To Sterling, emotions complicated business. His assistants had warned him that Morrow's garage might become a problem. Corbin had rejected 3 previous offers. So Sterling decided to visit personally. When he stepped out of the SUV wearing an expensive gray suit, he immediately noticed the cracked pavement and piles of scrap metal near the building. He saw an old man struggling to lift a heavy toolbox. He saw outdated equipment and fading paint. What he didn't see was value. Corbin greeted him politely, wiping grease from his hands onto a faded work towel. Sterling walked around the property with the confidence of someone who had already made up his mind. The land was worth millions once development began, but the aging garage itself looked ready for demolition. He explained his plans for the area and presented an offer that barely exceeded the assessed value of the building. To Sterling, it seemed generous. To Corbin, it felt insulting. The old mechanic listened quietly while sunlight streamed through the open garage door and illuminated decades of photographs hanging on the walls. Black and white pictures showed smiling drivers standing beside race cars. Newspaper clippings celebrated victories at tracks that no longer existed. Trophies covered a dusty shelf near the office. Sterling barely glanced at them. He repeated his offer and reminded Corbin that maintaining such an old property would only become more difficult with time. Corbin looked around the garage and felt every year of his age pressing against his shoulders. Business had slowed. Medical bills had increased. Part of him wondered if perhaps it was finally time to let go. Then his eyes landed on a photograph of his father standing beside a young driver wearing a leather racing jacket. His father had once told him that some things carried responsibilities bigger than profit. Corbin refused the offer. Sterling left frustrated. Over the following weeks, pressure mounted. Developers purchased neighboring properties. Construction crews began clearing nearby lots. Friends suggested that Corbin accept the money before it was too late. Even his daughter worried about his future. Still, every morning, he unlocked the garage at sunrise. One afternoon, while repairing an old pickup truck, Corbin noticed water leaking through the back storage room after a heavy storm. The room had remained untouched for years. Boxes covered the floor. Broken shelves leaned against the walls. As he moved old equipment away from the leak, his foot struck something solid beneath a worn rubber mat. Curious, he pulled back the flooring and discovered a metal hatch hidden beneath decades of dust. His father had never mentioned it. The rusted lock broke easily. Cool air rushed upward as Corbin opened the hatch and shined a flashlight into the darkness below. A staircase descended beneath the garage. His heart pounded. Slowly, he climbed down. The underground space stretched farther than he expected. Canvas sheets covered large objects arranged carefully around the room. Old filing cabinets lined the walls. Tools hung neatly from pegboards. When Corbin pulled back the first cover, he froze. Beneath the dusty fabric sat a pristine racing car. Its bright colors had faded slightly with age, but the number painted on its side remained unmistakable. He recognized it immediately. Every racing fan in the state knew that number. The car had belonged to legendary driver Alden Vail. Alden had dominated regional circuits during the early 1980s before disappearing after a tragic crash ended his career. Rumors claimed that his championship cars had been sold to private collectors overseas. Others believed they had been destroyed. Nobody knew the truth. Until now. Hands trembling, Corbin uncovered another vehicle. Then another. 5 complete race cars stood preserved inside the underground workshop. Beside them rested shelves filled with trophies, journals, blueprints, helmets, and thousands of photographs documenting an era of racing history thought to be lost forever. At the bottom of one cabinet, Corbin found a handwritten letter addressed to his father. Years earlier, after Alden's career ended, he had secretly asked Corbin's father to protect the collection until he could return. But Alden died unexpectedly before reclaiming it. Unable to betray his friend's trust, Corbin's father hid everything beneath the garage. He had planned to tell his son one day. Time simply ran out. News of the discovery spread quickly. Historians arrived. Journalists called constantly. Collectors offered astonishing amounts of money. Experts estimated the collection could be worth tens of millions of dollars. When Sterling Voss heard the news, disbelief washed over him. The property he had tried to buy for pennies now sat atop a treasure that could transform the entire region. For the first time in years, Sterling felt ashamed. He remembered the photographs he had ignored. The stories he never asked about. The pride in Corbin's eyes when he spoke about his family. Sterling realized he had nearly erased a piece of history because he had only seen financial potential. A week later, he returned to the garage. This time, he arrived alone. No assistants. No contracts. No sales pitch. Under the bright afternoon sun, he listened as Corbin shared stories about his father, the speedway, and the community that once gathered there every weekend. Sterling learned that preserving history mattered as much as creating the future. He offered something different. Instead of purchasing the property, he proposed funding a restoration project. The abandoned speedway could become a motorsports museum. The underground collection could remain in Ashford. The garage could be preserved as part of the exhibit. Local businesses would benefit. Young people could learn mechanical skills. Old racing fans could relive cherished memories. Most importantly, Corbin would remain its caretaker. For weeks, they worked side by side. Construction crews repaired the garage instead of demolishing it. Historians catalogued the collection. Former racers donated memorabilia. Volunteers painted walls and restored signs. The town slowly rediscovered its forgotten identity. Months later, thousands gathered for the grand opening. Families filled the streets again. Children climbed into restored race cars. Former mechanics reunited after decades apart. For the first time in years, Harbor Street echoed with laughter instead of silence. Corbin stood near the entrance beside a bronze plaque honoring his father and Alden Vale. Nearby, Sterling watched visitors walk through the museum. The project had become more successful than any business venture he had ever completed. Not financially. Personally. Because for the first time, he understood that true wealth wasn't measured by what you owned. It was measured by what you preserved. Before we reach the end of this story, if Corbin's journey touched your heart, please like this video, share it with someone who needs a reminder that every person has a story, and subscribe to Kindness Hub for more inspiring stories about hope, compassion, and unexpected miracles. And here's our special request for today: comment below with the words, "Some treasures can't be bought." As the sun began to set over Ashford, golden light reflected off the restored windows of Morrow's garage. Corbin sat quietly on the same bench where his wife once planted wildflowers. Children ran past carrying miniature racing flags. Families took photographs beneath the old sign that had nearly been torn down. Sterling joined him without speaking. They watched the crowd together. One man had spent his life protecting memories. The other had spent his life chasing profits. Both had discovered something neither expected. Sometimes the most valuable things in life remain hidden beneath the surface, waiting for someone willing to look beyond appearances. And sometimes, the greatest second chance belongs not to the person who loses everything, but to the one who finally learns what truly matters. Because kindness has a way of changing direction. It transforms strangers into partners, forgotten places into living history, and old garages into reminders that every person, every memory, and every dream deserves to be seen before it's judged. The land beneath Morrow's garage held a legendary collection worth millions. But the compassion, humility, and purpose discovered above ground proved priceless. And that was the treasure that changed everything.